CEO and founder of Cosmic Centaurs, and the host of Center Stage, a weekly video series where we explore bold ideas about the future of work and learning, and today, the future of teaching. Each Thursday afternoon at 2:30 p.m. UAE time, myself and some amazing guests come on LinkedIn Live to share insights, opinions, perspectives about how we work and learn. Before we begin, just a reminder, give this video a like, feel free to contribute, ask questions in the comments section. Tala and myself are both on the lookout for those, and if anybody has answers to your question, I guarantee you it will be Joe. Today, we're having a discuss segment with a dear mentor, teacher, and friend of mine, Jose Santos. Joe's an affiliated professor of practice in global management at INSEAD, and after spending 20 years in the managerial world, he moved from Italy to INSEAD and devoted himself to scholarly work, a dream from his youth. Joe's research and teaching focuses on the management of multinational enterprise, and particularly the management of global integration and global innovation. In addition to his position at INSEAD, Joe has served as a visiting scholar at MIT Sloan School of Management and a professor catedrático convidado at USP in Portugal. I don't know what that is, but it sounds pretty kick-ass. He's been teaching since 1971. He started his academic career teaching statistics and computation, of all things, and he likes to joke that he's had 50 years of being a great learner and a great teacher. If you see me gushing like a little girl, it's because I have immense respect for Joe and his work, and while I was at INSEAD, I had the privilege of taking Joe's Managing Enterprise Performance elective, his Managing Multinational Enterprise KMC, which we'll be talking about today. I also had the privilege of having him as my supervisor for my final paper, which coincidentally was about multinational expansion. Joe and I have stayed in touch since. He's been instrumental in developing the thinking around some of Cosmic Centaur's frameworks and our omnichannel organization model, and continues to be a great sounding board. Joe, I am so happy to have you here today.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here with you and with all our viewers and listeners. Great pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
All right, let's dive in. I have some tough questions for you. So as I mentioned earlier, over the past few weeks, you've been kind of diving deep into redesigning or updating your key management challenge around managing multinationals to adapt it to a new way of delivering the content, delivering it online over a number of days. I was, privy to the design process and was able to kind of see how you went about that. I was also lucky to be invited to come speak to your class about my experience as a global executive. Joe, you call this the first Agile KMC, or Key Management Challenge, and you designed it using the principles of Agile methodologies. Tell us what it means to have Agile teaching. How do you design an Agile teaching experience? How did you set up this course? How was it different from how you ran the KMC, not so long ago in my days?
Sure. Yes, not so long ago. And so first of all, it's important to note that the KMC, it's a very unique kind of course to INSEAD. And a KMC, or Key Management Challenge, is a course that is offered usually at the later stage, the final stage in my case, of the Global Executive MBA students or participants, as we called you at INSEAD. And so being, first of all, for Executive MBA students, this means that those coming to the program have around 10 years or more of experience in management, as you had. And so that means that they have already learned a lot about management by doing. So perhaps even by studying, but surely by doing. So they know already a lot about it. And a KMC is supposed to address a challenge or question or problem that existing theories aren't really able to address. And so they continue to be a challenge, a managerial challenge. And the challenge that is part of my own KMC, which I have been offering since the beginning of the GEMBA, of the Global Executive MBA program in 2004, is the managing the multinational enterprise, and the key challenge there is how to get a global performance out of units and individuals that are dispersed around the world. This is not new. This is not now. This is not digital. This has always been like this.
Right.
The multinational enterprise, the multinational endeavor of human beings has always been, well, remote. So managing at a distance, manage people in different contexts is what the challenge is. And suddenly we had to do it online. When I say suddenly, it isn't really suddenly, but it's because of the pandemic. So the pandemic and the fact that there was a second wave of the pandemic kind of made us realize that being in a classroom, as I've always been, wasn't an option anymore for those that wanted to take the KMC now. And so the alternative was the online alternative. And if I know something about being online, because I've been online for many years, so to speak, is that you can't just do online what you did in the classroom. This doesn't make sense. And so I had to come up with something new. And because I love to try things that are new, I decided to combine the method of methods that is expressed in the Agile methodology, or in the Agile manifesto, rather, and apply it to teaching, which is, by the way, what I do. So I call it Agile teaching exactly because I am a teacher, and I used it. I used the Agile method of methods, or meta methods, if we want to use a Sunday word, that is expressed in the manifesto that software developers wrote in the turn of the century, and so that's why this came about. So first of all, I learned how to develop software about 50 years ago, literally. So it's something I actually know. I could still do it today if I wanted. Although probably I had to go back to the languages that we used in those days, which were kind of old-fashioned now. But you see, when I learned how to develop software 50 years ago, the stage of development of using computers was such that I developed software, which is a very nice way of saying made software, while I was the user of the software. So I didn't make software because it was my job. I had to address certain problems, like solving systems of partial differential equations in space-time, which is a mouthful. And to do that, there was no software, but I had a computer. Because I had a computer, but there was no software to do that, well, I learned how to develop software and use the software for my own purposes. And so the idea of being a teacher and a student at the same time, the idea of being a maker and a user of software, the idea that knowledge is kind of software of our mind, that was the connection. So I connected easily something that I've known for decades, software development, computers, digital stuff, which didn't really change that much over the last 50 years.
No, it's very slow to change. I agree.
It changed a little bit, and those changes allowed us to do things today that were impossible 50 years ago. So that's a long answer to your question.
Yeah, and so practically, what does that mean in terms of how you designed the teaching experience for those who are attending this KMC? What are some of the things that you took from the methodology of Agile, but also the sort of specific methodologies beneath that, like a Scrum or a Kanban or whatever, that you kind of brought back into the teaching environment?
Right. So something that I had never tried before in the classroom, and I could have, by the way. So I'm not saying that this is only a way of teaching and therefore a way of learning for the participants, or students, as I prefer to call them. It's not specific to online, but I'll tell you about why online is so cool, at least for me. So I could have done this before. The idea is simple, but it didn't come to me before. It came to me because I had to do this thing online. It's always like this. There is some serendipitous event, something that happens that forces us to follow a different way. And I followed a different way. And so what is the way? I think that the first important insight that I had was that if I wanted to do something online that was not just a replica of what I did in the classroom, I could make the KMC not about sharing knowledge, right? In the traditional KMC, the one that you did was about sharing knowledge, both me sharing my knowledge with you and you sharing your knowledge amongst yourself. So the KMC has a lot of interaction, a lot of group work, a lot of discussions around either particular case studies or particular experiences of the participants as managers. So instead of sharing knowledge, we could make this a KMC about combining knowledge. And combining knowledge is a very different experience from sharing knowledge. So in combining knowledge can be operationalized by producing something, a deliverable. In the case of software development, of course, the combining of certain skills comes up as a piece of software, an app, for example, a working version of an app. In the case of the KMC, it came out as a guide, as we called it, as I called it. So, which is also a sort of program.
Right.
And so the participants in small teams, virtual teams in this case, of course, and me and my teaching assistant, all of us, produced a working version, well, actually 4 working versions of a guide. So that was the first thing that makes it different. So about combining knowledge and therefore creating new knowledge, right? So the point is that it's interesting that the makers or the writers of the manifesto did say in the manifesto, this is a manifesto for, and the words are very important, agile software development.
Yes.
Right? So agile is about a process. It's not about the structures, or rather it's about a structure in time. The process is a structure in time, but it's not a structure in space. So organizations cannot be agile. Their performance is agile. What they do can be agile. And therefore the same thing with the classroom. So as a class, in a classroom, we were not agile, so to speak. What we did was agile. And agile has to do with developing something, developing in the sense of making, but you make something new, which is why development is a nice word. Every piece of software is new, although it's always made with existing pieces of software, with an existing language, with existing routines, with existing pieces. And so, like creating new knowledge, every piece of new knowledge is a combination of existing knowledge. And so that's the main insight, I think, that was realized by this first edition of an Agile KMC.
Right. So you invited students to come in, be in teams. You gave them a task to create this guidebook, and they kind of had to iterate, right? So every day they had to add a small piece to that guidebook through the things they learned, through the things they know inherently, and that they could make explicit to one another. And in doing so, it was agile because it went through that process in order to build something together. Now, I wonder, you and I had a few conversations about agile methodologies as you were preparing for this course. What surprised you about sort of when you delved deeper into what the manifesto was and what the methodology was? What was something that you think surprised you? I know you like to ask that question in class, right? You always tell us what surprised you. So I'm now putting it back to you. And also, what surprised you about how the students engaged with this methodology and its spirit?
Right. So what surprised me when, partly because of your project, by the way, when you were doing your project that I was supervising, because you were describing the experience of the company that you were in at that time. And I became curious about Agile. I mean, Agile is one of those words that suddenly comes up, becomes fashionable.
Yeah.
And suddenly means absolutely everything and nothing. Like even today, most people confuse agile with fast, and
That's true.
agility and speed are not the same thing. One is about second derivatives, the other one is about first derivatives for the mathematical geeks in the audience.
Wow. Okay.
I don't know how to say this in few words. I say it like that. So you're confusing acceleration with speed, for example, which is not a good thing to do.
That's a very good metaphor.
Right. And so, for example, and so I try to avoid these fashions. Fashions, I think that's it. Comes with age. With age, you try to avoid fashions because you say, not again. Oh, the same thing with new words. Give me a break. So first of all, I avoided it because I said, you know what, this is, a lot of crap, so to speak. And then you came and you showed me what Agile was through your project. And I said, wow, this is interesting. Software development, apps, whoa. And then that's how I started to really look into it. And when I did look into it, I found a number of things. First of all, I could understand it easily, so to speak, because I had made software. I had been engaged with it. Actually, my first role, formal title in a company was, as we used to say in those days, informatics manager. Yeah. That's my title, I was so proud when I had that title. I was also young. And so I said, okay, so I know about this. I understand what these guys are talking about. I did what they're doing, what they're talking about. And the other thing, which I think was surprising to me, was the rigor of their language. They're engineers, so that's also my first training. So we tend to be rigorous with the language. They use words actually very rigorously, which is surprising and good. And they spoke about customer collaboration. And which, by the way, comes from the fact early on to me of being a maker of software and a user of software. So of course, it's about collaboration. It can happen inside you, like it happened inside me. But as software became more complex, it can't be in one individual only. So you need to bring it to team. So you can't just do it alone on your own. You can still do software on your own, of course. 1,000 years from now, probably the same thing will happen. But that's not the point. The point is that as software became more and more complex, you can't do it alone anymore, really, because it's too much knowledge that no one can have, given our bounded rationality. So I said, interesting. So it's true teamwork, because in a way, if you dig deep into their values, which is the first page of their manifesto, and on the second page, which is the principles, they're talking about true teamwork, which is a fascinating sort of ideal mode of production. Of course, most of the time, even in software making, even in the classroom, even with groups in the classroom, it's not about true teamwork. It's about group work. It's about a sort of decomposable task, and then one student does something, the other student does something, then somehow they put it together, or somebody else puts it together, and then it comes up. And that's not really true teamwork. It's important, it's crucial, it's collective endeavor, but true teamwork is what really is in the manifesto, which is the famous 1 + 1 = 3, as we often say, to say it quickly. Though group work is about, as I say it, 1 + 1 = 2.1. Now, 2.1 is better than 2, so make no mistake. But 3 is actually much better. It's much harder to get. So the idea of true teamwork, and then suddenly I said, okay, does this work virtually? And a virtual team produced this. So, and that was why it became suddenly also a piece of research for me. So my in a way, my motivation was just not to give a different experience to participants, allow them or afford them the possibility of combining knowledge, the knowledge from guest speakers like you. So there were 4 guest speakers during the 5 sections plus 1, the 6 sessions of the course. Then there was a brief lecture of me. So there was those 2 kind of user interactions with the students, which were kind of the makers, so to speak, or turned makers. And then they used most of the time, actually in total half of the time of the whole thing, to come up with this guide, with this piece of software, as it were, in a series of sprints, to use a a word that is kind of common in some Agile methodologies at least, and produce this guide. So what I think was surprising also was the fact that we could co-design, which is an important part of any Agile methodology, because that's where the customer collaboration is. Again, the word customer cannot be used in teaching because a school is not a market. So it's not really customer, but we can say user, because when you go, you use what you learn in school when you are a manager. And because I'm teaching multinational management, you're going to use it yourselves. And I used it. I also know about the use. It's my expertise. And I brought people like you, not to speak about what you know about being a global executive, but how you became a global executive, right? So I think that what surprised the participants and what delighted me, because they were able to actually get it and do it, was to produce this guide to becoming a global executive, which is, again, a road, a path to learning. It's not a path to being. It's not about being, so to speak, rather. It's more how do you become. And they were able to produce remarkable work. I'm very, very, very happy with what they were able to do. Of course, I was part of it. We were all part of it. But I mean, the four teams that produced it produced these four guides, and now it's still a working progress. So now there's a process that we're going to do sort of off course of trying to integrate the four guides
together
to come up with one. But so as many things in Agile, these are working versions, and probably there will never be a complete version. That's the fun.
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, that's
that's the fun of it. There will never be a complete version. There will never be a complete version of knowing, in particular of managing a multinational enterprise. And there will always be multinational enterprises. Yes.
For sure. I want to take a question from the audience, which is maybe in continuation of what you're speaking about. Designing this new way of teaching, using those principles, did you find that students' motivation and engagement, you were kind of touching upon that, but I want you to deep dive into it a little bit, was different? Were people more present? Did more people understand the concepts more thoroughly because they were making them and not just listening to them? How did it change the sort of the participation of everybody? And I have a second question following up on that. I can ask it again later, but maybe think about it in the background of your multi-processor brain. But how has that kind of, you said it was an experiment for you to see how virtual teams can operate and collaborate. How has that kind of changed your mind or not about collaboration in virtual teams?
Right. So let me go to the first part first.
Sure.
I am particularly delighted with the performance of the participants as teams, as a whole, and even individually. Although, of course, I only knew them briefly, so I can't even state that I know them. But from the little I know of them, I'm very, very happy with the outcome, because I do think that in a vast proportion, surely more than usual in the classroom, my main aim at teaching experienced executives, as you know, I only teach executive MBAs, executives in the executive education programs of INSEAD. So my only interaction is with people that actually know how to manage already. So what can I teach someone that already knows how to do something? And my major aim is to change the way they view the world, including the way they view management. And I believe that can be taught in the classroom, and it's very powerful when we achieve that. So I'm very happy whenever we achieve that, or when a good proportion of the students achieve that. And by looking at the outcome of their work, because they also have to do an individual paper at the end of the KMC, because the KMC is a real course, it's graded and everything. Because they did have to do an individual paper. In the individual papers, I can see the evolution from initial interactions I had with them individually during the co-design phase, which was prior, was asynchronous and was individual, and the and the paper at the end, which is a reflection paper, as you may remember. And so I could see that evolution, that they have changed the way, first of all, they understand Agile, surely. So that's an interesting outcome. I did not intend to teach them Agile, but they got Agile. And I think they will be quite remarkable in the application of Agile. At least they will teach some people that use Agile in such a odd way. They'll be more rigorous about that. And they were able to understand that you can indeed, in an experience like being in a virtual team, small virtual team, people that already know each other, right? They have been around together during the course of the Gemba for a number of months and modules. So it is possible to create something new. And in a couple of cases, to really create something remarkably new that was unexpected to them also. I think it was unexpected to everybody, but that's the point of teamwork. When do we know that something was truly teamwork and we were part of it? When the outcome surprises us. Right. If by the end of teamwork we say, okay, so you did that and you did that and you did that and I did this, it's not teamwork, it's group work. We just patched together smartly, well done things that each of us had, quote unquote. But teamwork surprises us all the time. And I think that I was delighted because I was surprised, meaning it came out better than I thought. But then again, perhaps that's my inclination. I'm a realist, so I tend to not expect that things will work in the first one. I believe in increment, by the way. Remember, I was trained very young in the scientific method.
Yes.
And the Agile manifesto is there's a lot of similitude between the values and justifications in it that are parallel, similar to those of the scientific method. So that's another thing I discovered about the manifesto. It's a kind of an application of the scientific method, and therefore very, very, very adequate for a high-end institution like education institution like INSEAD. In particular, one where we sort of like to think that we create new knowledge, that we are in the frontier of knowledge. And the KMCs, by the way, which are so unique to INSEAD, are a display of that frontier, because we go to the classroom with very smart and experienced participants arguing, there are these things that we don't know how to solve, that nobody knows how to solve. So let's talk about it, let's discuss it. But now we just didn't discuss it or share views about it. We said, let's make something about it. So That's it.
Absolutely. On this note, I'm going to ask you our last question of today, which maybe is also a perfect continuation of where you stopped that last thought, which is, can you finish the sentence and tell me why that's the word that you're going to choose? So the sentence is, the future of teaching is ...
Oh, the future of teaching is teaching.
You gave me the same answer in the Cosmic Conference. You said the future of work is work. I love it.
Yes, I'm sorry. The future of teaching is teaching. I cannot imagine a world without teachers. Sometimes people are very nice and they invite me and say, Joe, we would like to have you as a facilitator. And I say, I'm sorry, I don't know how to do that. Could you invite somebody else that actually knows how to do that? Yeah. I've been teaching for a long time. I actually know how to teach. I love teaching. And so, yes, the future of teaching is teaching. There will always be teachers. There will always be students. There will always be masters. There will always be apprentices. That's not new. It has hundreds of years or more. It will always be like this. Now, teaching will be very different in the future, but it will always be teaching. And so I hope that we can do more teaching as making combinations of what the students know, as opposed to just sharing what we know, or even making sure that there is an environment for them to share what they know. So I think we need to go from sharing to creating. But in a way, I was taught that way. If I go back and I think deeply about many very classic professors that taught me, they made me create things. They made me combine what they knew with what I knew. So in a way, we can do that combination inside. A great professor a great teacher makes us do that combination inside ourselves, but we can also do it together. That's new. That's what didn't happen before. So teaching that way, yes.
Brilliant. I love that answer. So before we close the session, Joe, thank you so much for being such a wonderful guest, taking time out of your day to join us. I always look forward to our conversation because, as you say, you're a great teacher. And so you leave me with things to think about for days. You know, that's my internal creating process. And a huge thank you to everyone who attended today. Of course, we'll be reposting the video on social pages, YouTube, and our website. If you don't do so already, please follow us on LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook, or go to our website and sign up to our newsletter. This week, we'll be taking a break for the next couple of weeks over the holidays. We're going to introspect and we're going to set our intentions for the next year, even if that's like a semi-fictional invention, and who believes in years anymore, especially after this one. I look forward to seeing all of you for our first episode of 2021 on January 7th at 2:30 p.m. Dubai time, as always. In the meantime, wishing you all a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, and hoping this year ends on a high note. Joe, once more, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Happy 2021. We all need a happy 2021. We will have one. We will have one.
Signing us out.